The evening was calm, with the golden light of the setting sun stretching across a deserted road outside the city. Nicole Bryant gently guided her Tesla Model Y through a long, smooth curve. The sleek, white car hummed quietly, reflecting the fruits of her labor. Nicole was proud of what she had achieved. At only 29, she was the CEO of a cybersecurity firm that had quickly gained recognition for its innovative solutions. Her fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel as soft jazz played through the car's premium sound system. The drive was her moment of peace after a long day of meetings, problem-solving, and managing her team. Suddenly, red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror, accompanied by a sharp siren. Nicole glanced at her speedometer. She wasn't speeding. Confused but calm, she signaled and pulled over onto the shoulder. The gravel crunched under her tires as she came to a stop. She adjusted her rearview mirror, watching as the officer stepped out of his cruiser. He was tall, with a stiff posture and a face set in hard lines. His uniform was neat, but there was something about his walk that spoke of authority bordering on intimidation. As the officer reached her car, Nicole lowered the window. "License and registration," he barked. His voice was curt, devoid of politeness. Nicole kept her tone steady. "Of course, officer. May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" "Just give me your documents," he replied, ignoring her question. Nicole handed over her license and registration, watching as the officer's eyes flicked over her car's interior. The sleek dashboard, her leather laptop bag on the passenger seat, and several tech gadgets mounted near the display caught his attention. "That's quite a setup you've got," the officer said, his tone laced with suspicion. "A little fancy for someone like you, isn't it?" Nicole felt her stomach tighten. She had dealt with this type of judgment before, but it never became easier. Keeping her voice professional, she replied, "I run a cybersecurity company. These are standard tools for my work." The officer's eyebrows arched, and his lips curled into a faint, skeptical smile. "Cybersecurity, huh? And you can afford this?" He gestured toward the Tesla with his flashlight. "Yes," Nicole replied firmly. "I worked hard to get where I am." The officer didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked back to his cruiser, her documents in hand. Nicole's eyes followed him through the side mirror. Minutes dragged on as he spoke into his radio, glancing back at her occasionally. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, frustration simmering beneath her calm exterior. Finally, the officer returned. His expression was even colder than before. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. "Why?" Nicole's voice was sharp now. "I've done nothing wrong." "I'm not going to ask again," the officer said, his tone threatening. "Step out of the vehicle now." Nicole hesitated but complied. She opened the door and stepped onto the gravel. The officer extended his hand. "The keys, please." "This is completely unreasonable," Nicole protested, holding her keys tightly. "You can't just take my car without cause." The officer's patience thinned. "The keys, ma'am. Or we can take this to the station." Nicole glanced at the empty road stretching into the distance, then back at the officer. With her heart pounding and her hands trembling, she handed over the keys. The officer snatched them, his expression triumphant. "This vehicle will be impounded until further notice," he said. Without another word, he got into the Tesla, slammed the door, and started the engine. Nicole stood on the shoulder of the road, watching as her car pulled away. But a faint smile began to spread across her face. This officer had no idea what he had just stepped into. Officer Adam Roberts adjusted the seat in the Tesla Model Y, muttering under his breath. "Ridiculous," he scoffed, looking around at the sleek interior. "How does someone like her afford this?" The dashboard lit up as the car's systems booted. A soft chime greeted him, followed by the Tesla's voice assistant. "Welcome, Nicole Bryant," the car said pleasantly. "Not anymore," Roberts sneered, gripping the wheel. He barely noticed the screen flashing an unusual symbol, a small lock icon glowing red. He shifted into drive, confident in his authority to take the vehicle. He hadn't gone more than 50 yards when the Tesla emitted a loud beep. The dashboard turned a vivid shade of red, displaying the words, "Access restricted." Roberts frowned, tapping at the screen. "What the hell?" he muttered, trying to dismiss the alert. Nothing happened. Instead, The car slowed itself to a complete stop, the doors locking with a sharp click. A low hum filled the cabin, followed by Nicole's voice, calm and steady but unmistakably in control. "Good evening, Officer Roberts," she said through the speakers. Roberts's eyes widened as he scanned the empty road around him. He gripped the wheel tighter. "What is this? How are you?" Nicole's voice interrupted, now tinged with authority. "Let me explain. This isn't just any car, officer. I've customized it with proprietary technology. You're sitting in what I like to call my mobile fortress." Roberts jabbed at random buttons on the touchscreen, trying to regain control. The car remained unresponsive, its systems entirely under Nicole's command. "You've made a mistake," she continued. "A very big one. I suggest you sit tight and listen." Roberts's face burned with frustration. "You think this is funny? Unlock this car right now, or you'll regret it." Nicole laughed softly. "Oh, officer, I think you're the one who'll regret this." The hum grew louder as new alerts popped up on the screen. "Lockdown mode engaged," it read. The seatbelt tightened around Roberts's chest, pinning him in place. "Get me out of here," he shouted, struggling against the restraints. Nicole ignored his protests. "You stopped me for no reason. You humiliated me. You assumed I couldn't possibly own a car like this legally because of the color of my skin. Am I getting this right?" Roberts said nothing, but his jaw clenched. "Now," Nicole continued, "I want to know why you did it. Was it prejudice? Greed? Or are you just another cog in a corrupt machine?" The cabin grew silent, save for the officer's labored breathing. "Answer me, officer," Nicole pressed. Roberts finally snapped. "You don't know anything about me," he yelled. "I don't owe you an explanation." Nicole's voice remained calm. "Then let me show you what I do know." The Tesla's display shifted, showing a profile of Roberts, his name, badge number, and recent case history. Nicole had pulled the data from a public-facing database in a matter of seconds. "I see a pattern," she said. "You've pulled over a lot of drivers like me, young, successful, and black. And I'm guessing I'm not the first person you've intimidated or harassed." Roberts's face turned pale. "I'll admit," Nicole said, her tone sharpening, "I didn't plan for this encounter. But now that it's happened, I'm going to use it. I want you to think very carefully about what you're going to do next." The officer's panic began to shift into something else. Shame. For the first time, he seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Simple," Nicole replied. "You're going to tell me everything. Who you report to, who's behind this abuse of power, and most importantly, how deep the corruption goes." Roberts hesitated. "I can't. You don't understand. If I talk, they'll come for me. My family." Nicole's voice softened, but her resolve didn't waver. "And if you don't talk, I'll expose you. All of it. Your behavior, your abuse of authority, it'll be public record by morning." The silence in the car felt heavy, like the weight of years of wrongdoing pressing down on Roberts's chest. Finally, he sighed. "Fine. I'll tell you what I know. But if I do this, you have to promise me something." "What's that?" Nicole asked. "Help me fix it," Roberts said, his voice trembling. "I don't want to just burn everything down. I want to make things right." Nicole paused, her expression unreadable through the camera. Then she replied, her voice steady. "You help me expose the truth, and I'll make sure this fight is about justice, not revenge." Roberts leaned back in the seat, defeated but resolved. "Okay, I'm in." The car's systems returned to normal. The doors unlocked with a soft click, and the screen displayed a simple message: "Partnership initiated." Nicole's voice returned, softer this time. "Welcome to the right side of history, Officer Roberts." The air in Nicole's apartment was thick with tension as Officer Adam Roberts sat at her kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. Across from him, Nicole leaned forward, her laptop open between them, its screen glowing faintly in the dim light. For the first time in years, Roberts wasn't sure what to say. He was sitting in the enemy's home, or so it had felt at first. But now, faced with the determination in Nicole's eyes, he couldn't deny it anymore. He was on the wrong side of justice, and she wasn't just his adversary. She was his best shot at redemption. Let's start at the beginning, Nicole said, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm but firm. Who gave you the authority to confiscate my car without cause? Roberts hesitated, his fingers tapping nervously against the ceramic mug. It's complicated, he said finally. Uncomplicated, Nicole replied sharply. Roberts exhaled slowly, looking down at the table. There's a network. It's not just me. It's bigger than you think. Officers, judges, even local business owners. They all benefit in some way from what we do. Nicole's eyebrows arched slightly. Define what you do. Roberts rubbed his temple, shame flickering across his face. Thefts, mostly. Cars like yours are easy targets. The system lets us profile drivers, who's likely to fight back, who's not. Once we seize the vehicle, it goes into an impound lot. From there, it's sold off in auctions or moved to private buyers under fake names. Nicole's stomach churned, but she kept her composure. And the money? It gets laundered, Roberts admitted. Through shell companies, kickbacks, you name it. The people at the top get rich, and the rest of us, well, we get our cut. Nicole leaned back, her mind racing. The picture he was painting wasn't just corrupt. It was organized, deliberate, and insidious. Why haven't you come forward? She asked after a pause. Roberts let out a hollow laugh. Come forward? Do you know what happens to people who blow the whistle on this kind of operation? They get blacklisted, or worse. I've seen good men buried under fake charges just for asking too many questions. Nicole's jaw tightened. So instead of fighting it, you went along with it. Roberts looked her in the eye, his expression weary. At first, I told myself it wasn't my problem. Then, when I started taking the money, I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone, but I knew better. I always knew better. Nicole's gaze softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. You're here now, Roberts. That counts for something. But I need more than stories. I need proof. The first lead. Roberts nodded and pulled out a small notebook from his jacket pocket. I've got names. Places. A lot of it's in code, but if you're as good as you say you are. Nicole smirked faintly. I'll handle the code. She opened a new program on her laptop and began typing furiously. Roberts watched as streams of data filled the screen. Nicole's hands moved with practiced ease, navigating through encrypted files and databases faster than he thought possible. What exactly are you looking for? He asked. Patterns, she replied without looking up. Anything that connects the dots between you, the impound lots, and the people running this racket. Minutes turned into an hour. Then Nicole froze, her eyes narrowing at the screen. What is it? Roberts asked, leaning closer. This, Nicole said, pointing to a file. It's a payment log. The names are redacted, but the amounts and dates match up with the times you've pulled over drivers. Someone is paying for these cars to disappear, and they're paying a lot. Roberts's face darkened. That's Morrison's signature, he said, pointing to a scribbled initial at the bottom of the document. Who's Morrison? Nicole asked. My lieutenant, Roberts said bitterly. He's the one who runs most of this operation on the police side. If this log is accurate, he's made millions off of stolen vehicles. Nicole leaned back, her expression grim. He's not the only one. These transactions aren't just local. They're connected to other cities, even states. This isn't a small network, it's national. Danger lurks. As the realization sank in, Roberts's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, and his face went pale. It's Morrison, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Nicole's eyes narrowed. Answer it, but put it on speaker. Roberts hesitated but complied, pressing the call button. Roberts, came Morrison's voice low and gruff. Where the hell are you? I'm just at home, Roberts lied, his hand trembling slightly. Good, Morrison replied. Listen, we've got a problem. That car you impounded earlier, it belongs to someone who's been asking the wrong questions. We need to make sure it doesn't come back to bite us. Understand? Roberts swallowed hard. Yeah, I understand. Good. Handle it. The line went dead. Nicole sat in stunned silence for a moment before speaking. They know, Roberts. They know I'm not going to let this go. Roberts nodded, his face tight with fear. If they're calling me, it means they're watching you too. Nicole's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with determination. Let them watch. They'll wish they hadn't. The next step, Nicole stood, closing her laptop and grabbing her jacket. We're going to need more than this log to bring them down. Morrison's just one piece of the puzzle. We need the whole picture. And how do we get that? Roberts asked, rising to follow her. Nicole's smile was faint but confident. We start at the source, the impound lot. Roberts hesitated. If we're caught snooping there, then we'll make sure we're not caught, Nicole interrupted. It's time to show them what happens when you underestimate the right people. With that, the two of them stepped into the night, their unlikely partnership solidified by a shared mission: to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The air in Nicole's apartment was thick with tension as Officer Adam Roberts sat at her kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. Across from him, Nicole leaned forward, her laptop open between them, its screen glowing faintly in the dim light. For the first time in years, Roberts wasn't sure what to say. He was sitting in the enemy's home, or so it had felt at first. But now, faced with the determination in Nicole's eyes, he couldn't deny it anymore. He was on the wrong side of justice, and she wasn't just his adversary. She was his best shot at redemption. Let's start at the beginning, Nicole said, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm but firm. Who gave you the authority to confiscate my car without cause? Roberts hesitated, his fingers tapping nervously against the ceramic mug. It's complicated, he said finally. Uncomplicated, Nicole replied sharply. Roberts exhaled slowly, looking down at the table. There's a network. It's not just me. It's bigger than you think. Officers, judges, even local business owners. They all benefit in some way from what we do. Nicole's eyebrows arched slightly. Define what you do. Roberts rubbed his temple, shame flickering across his face. Thefts, mostly. Cars like yours are easy targets. The system lets us profile drivers, who's likely to fight back, who's not. Once we seize the vehicle, it goes into an impound lot. From there, it's sold off in auctions or moved to private buyers under fake names. Nicole's stomach churned, but she kept her composure. And the money? It gets laundered, Roberts admitted. Through shell companies, kickbacks, you name it. The people at the top get rich, and the rest of us, well, we get our cut. Nicole leaned back, her mind racing. The picture he was painting wasn't just corrupt. It was organized, deliberate, and insidious. Why haven't you come forward? She asked after a pause. Roberts let out a hollow laugh. Come forward? Do you know what happens to people who blow the whistle on this kind of operation? They get blacklisted, or worse. I've seen good men buried under fake charges just for asking too many questions. Nicole's jaw tightened. So instead of fighting it, you went along with it. Roberts looked her in the eye, his expression weary. At first, I told myself it wasn't my problem. Then, when I started taking the money, I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone. But I knew better. I always knew better. Nicole's gaze softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. You're here now, Roberts. That counts for something. But I need more than stories. I need proof. The first lead. Roberts nodded and pulled out a small notebook from his jacket pocket. I've got names. Places. A lot of it's in code, but if you're as good as you say you are. Nicole smirked faintly. I'll handle the code. She opened a new program on her laptop and began typing furiously. Roberts watched as streams of data filled the screen. Nicole's hands moved with practiced ease, navigating through encrypted files and databases faster than he thought possible. What exactly are you looking for? He asked. Patterns, she replied without looking up. Anything that connects the dots between you, the impound lots, and the people running this racket. Minutes turned into an hour. Then Nicole froze, her eyes narrowing at the screen. What is it? Roberts asked, leaning closer. This, Nicole said, pointing to a file. It's a payment log. The names are redacted, but the amounts and dates match up with the times you've pulled over drivers. Someone is paying for these cars to disappear, and they're paying a lot. Roberts's face darkened. That's Morrison's signature, he said, pointing to a scribbled initial at the bottom of the document. Who's Morrison? Nicole asked. My lieutenant, Roberts said bitterly. He's the one who runs most of this operation on the police side. If this log is accurate, he's made millions off of stolen vehicles. Nicole leaned back, her expression grim. He's not the only one. These transactions aren't just local. They're connected to other cities, even states. This isn't a small network, it's national. Danger lurks. As the realization sank in, Roberts's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, and his face went pale. "It's Morrison," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Nicole's eyes narrowed. "Answer it, but put it on speaker." Roberts hesitated but complied, pressing the call button. "Roberts," came Morrison's voice low and gruff. "Where the hell are you?" "I'm just at home," Roberts lied, his hand trembling slightly. "Good," Morrison replied. "Listen, we've got a problem. That car you impounded earlier, it belongs to someone who's been asking the wrong questions. We need to make sure it doesn't come back to bite us. Understand?" Roberts swallowed hard. "Yeah, I understand." "Good. Handle it." The line went dead. Nicole sat in stunned silence for a moment before speaking. "They know, Roberts. They know I'm not going to let this go." Roberts nodded, his face tight with fear. "If they're calling me, it means they're watching you too." Nicole's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with determination. "Let them watch. They'll wish they hadn't." The next step, Nicole stood, closing her laptop and grabbing her jacket. "We're going to need more than this log to bring them down. Morrison's just one piece of the puzzle. We need the whole picture." "And how do we get that?" Roberts asked, rising to follow her. Nicole's smile was faint but confident. "We start at the source, the impound lot." Roberts hesitated. "If we're caught snooping there, then we'll make sure we're not caught," Nicole interrupted. "It's time to show them what happens when you underestimate the right people." With that, the two of them stepped into the night, their unlikely partnership solidified by a shared mission: to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The impound lot loomed in the distance like a fortress. Rows of vehicles sat in the dim glow of high-mounted security lights, their shadows stretching across the asphalt. Nicole and Roberts parked a block away, using the cover of darkness to plan their next move. "This place is locked down tight," Roberts muttered, peering through binoculars. "Guards on rotation, cameras on every corner. Even I don't have full access without clearance." Nicole smirked faintly. "Good thing we're not relying on your clearance, then." She reached into her bag and pulled out a compact tablet. Her fingers flew across the screen, and after a few seconds, the lights illuminating the lot flickered. "What did you just do?" Roberts asked, his tone a mix of awe and concern. "Disabled their cameras," Nicole replied coolly. "The guards won't notice. They'll just think the feed is glitching." Roberts gave her an uneasy glance. "You really are something else." Nicole ignored the comment and adjusted her jacket. "Let's move. We're not here to admire the scenery." Inside the lion's den, they slipped through a side gate Nicole had unlocked remotely. The lot was eerily quiet except for the occasional bark of a distant dog. Nicole moved with purpose, scanning each row of cars as they walked. "What exactly are we looking for?" Roberts whispered. "Paperwork," Nicole replied. "Every vehicle here should have a file somewhere: why it was impounded, who authorized it, and where it's going next. If this lot is part of Morrison's operation, there'll be discrepancies." They reached a small office building in the center of the lot. Roberts hesitated at the door, glancing at Nicole. "It's locked," he said. "Not for long." Nicole pulled out a small device resembling a USB stick. She inserted it into the electronic keypad, and within seconds, the door clicked open. "You carry that thing everywhere?" Roberts asked, half joking. "Always be prepared," Nicole replied, stepping inside. The office was cramped, with shelves of files lining the walls and a desk covered in scattered papers. Nicole immediately began searching the computer terminal while Roberts rummaged through the physical records. "Found something," Roberts said after a few minutes. He held up a logbook with several entries circled in red pen. Nicole scanned the page and frowned. "These VIN numbers don't match the vehicles listed in the impound reports. It's a classic swap. A car comes in, but the paperwork says it's something else entirely. They're moving stolen vehicles through here." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up digital records that confirmed what the logbook hinted at. Dates, times, and destinations all pointed to a larger operation than they had imagined. "This isn't just a chop shop," Nicole murmured. "It's a distribution hub." The guards close in. Before they could dig deeper, the sound of voices outside froze them in place. "You sure you saw something?" one guard said, his flashlight beam sweeping across the lot. "Yeah," another replied. "Gate was open when I checked. Someone's here." Nicole's eyes darted to the office window, where the faint glow of her laptop screen could easily give them away. She quickly powered it down and gestured to Roberts. "Back door," she whispered. They slipped out just as the guards entered the office. Hiding behind a row of cars, they watched as the men began searching the small space. "We need to go," Roberts hissed. "Not yet," Nicole replied. She pointed to a cluster of trucks near the far edge of the lot. "Those trucks, they're loaded. If we can figure out where they're going, we'll have another piece of the puzzle." Roberts groaned but followed her as she moved toward the trucks. Nicole pulled out her phone and snapped pictures of the license plates and shipping labels affixed to the back of each vehicle. Just as they finished, a loud voice called out behind them. "Hey, who's there?" They turned to see one of the guards approaching, his flashlight trained on them. "Run," Nicole whispered, already darting between rows of cars. "The chase." The guard shouted for backup as he gave chase. More beams of light swept across the lot, and the sound of boots pounding against asphalt echoed in the night. Nicole led the way, her quick thinking and intimate knowledge of the lot's layout keeping them one step ahead. She pulled Roberts into a narrow gap between two stacks of cars, motioning for him to stay silent as the guards ran past. "Do you have a plan?" Roberts whispered, his breath heavy. "I always have a plan," Nicole replied, pulling out her phone. She activated the Tesla's remote control system, and within seconds, her car rolled silently through the front gate. The sudden movement caught the guards' attention, and they turned toward it. One of them started, but the Tesla's headlights flared brightly, blinding them. The car then emitted a high-pitched alarm, scattering the guards in confusion. "Let's go," Nicole said, taking advantage of the distraction. Narrow escape. Nicole and Roberts slipped out through the same side gate they had entered, sprinting back to their parked vehicle. As they climbed inside, Roberts glanced back at the impound lot, where the guards were still trying to figure out what had happened. "That was insane," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Nicole started the car, her expression calm but focused. "It was necessary, and now we have what we need." She held up her phone, which displayed the photos she had taken. Each shipping label contained a destination that could lead them closer to the heart of the operation. "This is just the beginning," Nicole said as she pulled onto the road. "Morrison isn't going to know what hit him." Roberts leaned back in his seat, a mix of fear and admiration on his face. He had thought he was the one in control of his life, his decisions. But now, riding shotgun with Nicole, he realized he was just starting to learn what real control and real justice looked like. The dim glow of Nicole's laptop illuminated her determined face as she and Roberts sat in her apartment, piecing together the threads of the corrupt network. The photos Nicole had taken at the impound lot revealed destinations that were anything but ordinary. Warehouses tied to private companies, high-end dealerships, and even government buildings. "This is bigger than I thought," Roberts muttered, leaning over her shoulder. "If these destinations are right, it's not just stolen cars. They're funneling money, laundering it, and using legitimate fronts to keep the system clean on paper." Nicole's fingers flew across the keyboard as she cross-referenced the destinations with financial records she had accessed. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a screen. "One of these companies is tied to Lieutenant Morrison. He's listed as a consultant." Roberts let out a bitter laugh. "Consultant? That's code for ringleader. He's been using his position to move stolen vehicles under everyone's noses." Nicole leaned back, her jaw tight. "If we take him down, the entire network could collapse. But we'll need something undeniable to expose him. Something he can't spin." Roberts hesitated. "There's only one way to do that. We have to catch him in the act." The charity gala. A week later, Nicole and Roberts stood outside the grand doors of a downtown hotel. Inside, The city's elite mingled at a charity gala hosted by none other than Lieutenant Morrison. The event was officially a fundraiser for police community relations, but Nicole knew better. "This is where the deals are made," Roberts explained, adjusting the tie on his borrowed suit. "The gala gives Morrison a reason to mingle with his clients without raising suspicion." Nicole, dressed in an elegant black gown, slipped a small earpiece into her ear and handed Roberts a matching one. "Stick to the plan. Get close to Morrison, keep him talking, and plant this." She handed him a miniature recording device disguised as a pin. Roberts stared at it for a moment before nodding. "Got it. What about you?" "I'll be monitoring everything," Nicole said, holding up her phone. "If things go south, I'll find a way to get us out." The two entered the ballroom, the air thick with the hum of conversations and the clinking of glasses. Morrison stood near the center, laughing loudly with a group of men in tailored suits. His imposing figure commanded the room, his confidence unshaken. "Showtime," Roberts muttered, making his way toward the lieutenant. The dance of deception. As Roberts approached Morrison, Nicole slipped into the shadows, positioning herself near a corner where she could see everything without being noticed. Her phone displayed a live feed from the pin camera Roberts carried, giving her a clear view of Morrison's smug expression. "Roberts," Morrison boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Didn't expect to see you here tonight." "Last-minute assignment," Roberts replied smoothly. "Captain wanted some extra security for the event. You know how it is." Morrison chuckled. "Always good to see you taking initiative." As they chatted, Roberts subtly shifted the conversation toward the impound lot. "Saw some interesting stuff come through the lot last week. Seemed high profile." Morrison's smile didn't falter, but Nicole noticed a flicker of caution in his eyes. "High profile?" "Nah, just routine impounds," Morrison said casually. "Why? Something catch your eye?" "Just curious," Roberts said, his tone light. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I know how things work, Lieutenant. If there's an opportunity to get in on the action, I'd like to know about it." Nicole's heart pounded as she watched the interaction. Morrison's smile returned, but it carried a predatory edge. "Careful, Roberts," Morrison said, his voice dropping. "You don't want to bite off more than you can chew." The break in the plan. Before Roberts could respond, another officer approached Morrison, whispering something in his ear. Morrison's expression darkened, and he turned back to Roberts. "Excuse me for a moment," he said curtly, striding away. Roberts moved to the edge of the room, his face pale as he whispered into his earpiece. "He's suspicious. He knows something's up." Nicole's mind raced. "We need to get that recording. Did you plant the pin?" "Not yet," Roberts replied, glancing nervously around the room. "He's too guarded." Nicole made a decision. "I'm coming in. Stay where you are." She stepped out of the shadows, adjusting her gown as she walked confidently toward Morrison. Her appearance was striking enough to catch his attention immediately. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said, her tone polite but firm. Morrison turned, his eyebrows rising slightly. "And you are?" "Nicole Bryant," she said with a small smile. "Founder of Bryant Cybersecurity. I couldn't help but notice your event. It's quite impressive." Morrison's demeanor shifted, his charm returning. "Ms. Bryant, it's an honor. I didn't expect to meet someone of your stature here tonight." "I like to keep an eye on how community funds are spent," Nicole said smoothly. "I'd love to discuss your department's initiatives sometime." Morrison grinned, but there was a flicker of wariness in his eyes. "Of course. Always happy to talk about our work." As he spoke, Nicole subtly tapped her phone, activating a nearby microphone she had planted earlier. The turning point. Moments later, Morrison excused himself, heading to a private room at the back of the ballroom. Nicole signaled Roberts, who followed quietly. She watched through her phone as Roberts slipped the recording pin onto Morrison's desk. Suddenly, Morrison turned, catching Roberts in the act. "What the hell are you doing?" Morrison demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "Thinking quickly," Roberts said. "I thought I saw something suspicious on your desk. Just trying to keep things secure." Morrison's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, Nicole's voice rang out from the earpiece. "Get out of there. Now." Roberts nodded subtly and backed away. Morrison didn't stop him, but his suspicion was clear. A narrow escape. Back in Nicole's apartment, Roberts slumped into a chair, his face pale. That was too close. But we got what we needed, Nicole said, pulling up the audio file from the recording pin. As they listened, Morrison's voice revealed everything. His role in the network, his connections to higher-ups, and even the locations of key evidence. This is it, Nicole said, her voice filled with determination. This is how we bring him down. But Roberts didn't share her enthusiasm. If Morrison figures out it was us, he won't just come after me. He'll come after you too. Nicole's expression hardened. Let him try. I'm not afraid of him. I'm afraid of what happens if we do nothing. Roberts nodded reluctantly. For the first time, he understood the full scope of what they were up against, and why Nicole wouldn't back down. The moon cast pale light over the city as Nicole sat alone in her living room, the glow from her laptop illuminating the lines of exhaustion on her face. The audio file from Morrison had been a breakthrough, but it wasn't enough on its own. She needed more, a smoking gun that would topple the entire operation. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft knock of knuckles against her door. Nicole tensed but relaxed slightly when she glanced through the peephole. It was Roberts. She opened the door, and he stepped inside, his shoulders slumped, his face drawn with fatigue. "Any luck?" he asked, nodding toward her laptop. "Plenty of leads," Nicole replied, her tone clipped, "but no guarantees." Roberts sat down heavily on the couch, running a hand through his hair. "You've been at this all night?" Nicole gave him a sharp look. "Do you think Morrison's sleeping peacefully? If we're going to stop him, I don't have the luxury of resting." Her words carried an edge that made Roberts shift uncomfortably. "Look," he began hesitantly, "I need to tell you something. Something I haven't been honest about." Nicole leaned back, her arms crossed. "What is it now, Roberts?" He looked away, his voice trembling slightly. "Your brother, Marcus, I was involved in his case." A confession of guilt. Nicole froze, her heart pounding. "What did you just say?" Roberts couldn't meet her eyes. "I didn't know him personally, but I was part of the task force that took him down. Morrison called it a clean operation. Said Marcus was running illegal trades using his tech business as a front. I followed orders, Nicole. I didn't question them." Nicole's chest tightened, anger and grief surging through her. "You're telling me you helped ruin his life? That you helped frame an innocent man?" Roberts nodded slowly, his face pale. "I didn't realize it at the time, I swear. But looking back, it was clear. The evidence was planted. Marcus was just convenient." Nicole rose to her feet, pacing the room as tears welled in her eyes. "You destroyed my family, Roberts. Do you have any idea what you did to us? My brother lost everything. My mother, she died while he was in prison. She never got to see him cleared." Roberts looked stricken. "I didn't know about your mother. Nicole, I'm so sorry. If I could take it back, I would." Nicole stopped pacing, her fists clenched. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Roberts. You've hurt too many people to just apologize and move on." Roberts stood, his voice firm but pleading. "I know I can't undo the damage, but I can make this right. Let me help you take them down. Not just for your brother, for everyone they've hurt." Nicole stared at him, her emotions swirling in a storm of anger, pain, and reluctant understanding. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold. "You get one chance, Roberts. One. If you screw this up, you'll regret ever walking into my life." The next move. The following day, Nicole and Roberts met in a secluded tech lab owned by one of Nicole's trusted colleagues. The room buzzed with the faint hum of servers, and walls lined with monitors displayed streams of data. "We need to find the ledger," Nicole said, her eyes fixed on the screens. "If Morrison is running this operation, there's a master list of every deal, names, dates, and amounts. That's our ticket to shutting it all down." Roberts frowned. "The ledger won't be at the station. Morrison wouldn't risk keeping it somewhere so obvious." "Then where?" Nicole asked, her tone sharp. Roberts thought for a moment. "There's a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It's listed as a storage facility for impounded evidence, but it's off the books. No one gets access except Morrison and his inner circle." Nicole's eyes lit up with determination. That's where we're going. Breaking in. The warehouse loomed large and foreboding in the moonlight, its barbed wire fence and security cameras giving it the appearance of a fortress. Nicole and Roberts crouched behind a stack of crates, surveying the building. This is risky, Roberts muttered. If we're caught here, there's no talking our way out. Nicole smirked faintly. That's why we're not getting caught. She pulled out her tablet and began hacking into the warehouse's security system. The cameras blinked off one by one, and the electronic lock on the main gate released with a soft click. Let's move, Nicole said, leading the way. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Rows of shelves stretched into the shadows, filled with boxes marked as evidence. Roberts scanned the labels, his eyes narrowing. This is it, he said, pointing to a locked filing cabinet near the back. Morrison's files. Nicole got to work, using a small portable device to pick the lock. The cabinet opened with a soft creak, revealing stacks of files and a small, encrypted hard drive. This is the jackpot, Nicole said, slipping the drive into her bag. Ambush. Before they could leave, the sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Someone's here, Roberts whispered, pulling Nicole into the shadows. 2 guards entered, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. You take the left, one said. I'll check the shelves. Nicole's mind raced. They couldn't leave without the drive, but getting caught would mean the end of everything. Thinking quickly, she whispered to Roberts, "Create a distraction. I'll get us an exit." Roberts nodded and moved quietly toward a stack of crates. With a swift push, he sent them toppling, the loud crash drawing the guards' attention. "Over there!" one of them shouted, rushing toward the noise. While the guards were distracted, Nicole activated a smoke grenade she brought for emergencies, filling the room with a dense cloud. She grabbed Roberts's arm, guiding him toward the exit. They burst into the night air, coughing but unharmed. Nicole glanced back at the warehouse, her eyes blazing with triumph. "We've got what we need," she said. "Now it's time to end this." Roberts nodded, his face grim. No turning back now. The following morning, Nicole and Roberts sat in her apartment, staring at the encrypted hard drive they had retrieved from the warehouse. The weight of their mission hung heavy in the air. If this drive contained what they hoped, it would expose Morrison's entire operation. But cracking it wouldn't be easy. "This thing is locked tighter than Fort Knox," Roberts said, watching as Nicole worked her magic on her laptop. "Can you even get into it?" Nicole didn't look up, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "If Morrison thinks encryption will stop me, he's underestimated the wrong person." Roberts leaned back, arms crossed, his face etched with worry. "We're running out of time. Morrison's probably already covering his tracks." Nicole smirked faintly. "Then I'd better move fast." Cracking the code. Hours passed as Nicole's algorithms worked to decrypt the hard drive. Finally, the screen lit up with rows of neatly organized files. Nicole's breath hitched as she opened the first folder. "There it is," she said softly. The files contained everything: payment logs, lists of impounded vehicles, and detailed records of money laundering schemes. One document stood out, a ledger detailing transactions between Morrison and several high-profile figures, including city officials, business leaders, and even a federal judge. "This is it," Nicole said, her voice trembling with a mix of triumph and disbelief. "This proves everything." Roberts leaned over, his eyes scanning the screen. "This is bigger than I imagined. If this gets out, it won't just take down Morrison. It'll expose an entire network of corruption." Nicole's expression hardened. "Good. That's exactly what I want." But before they could celebrate, Roberts's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, and his face paled. "It's Morrison," he said, showing Nicole the screen. "Answer it," Nicole said, her tone sharp. Roberts hesitated, then swiped to answer, putting the call on speaker. "Roberts," Morrison's voice growled. "Where are you?" "At home," Roberts lied. "Bull. I know you've been snooping around the warehouse," Morrison said, his tone venomous. "Do you think I wouldn't notice?" Roberts glanced at Nicole, panic flashing in his eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about." Morrison laughed coldly. "You're a terrible liar. Listen carefully, Roberts. You have one chance to fix this. Bring me whatever you took tonight, or you'll regret it. The line went dead. The ultimatum. Nicole stared at the phone, her mind racing. He knows. We need to move fast. Roberts shook his head, his hands trembling. You don't understand. If he knows it's me, I'm as good as dead. My family. Nicole placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Your family isn't the only one at risk. Think about the lives Morrison has already destroyed. Do you really want to let him keep doing this? Robert sighed, his shoulders sagging. You're right, but we can't just drop this and hope it works itself out. We need a plan. Nicole nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. Then we'll make one. We're going to hit him where it hurts, in front of everyone he thinks he controls. The gala's second act. That evening, Morrison hosted a follow-up meeting with his inner circle at the same hotel where the gala had been held. This time, the atmosphere was far more serious. Men and women in expensive suits whispered nervously, their eyes darting around the room. Morrison stood at the head of the table, his face a mask of barely concealed rage. Someone in this room has been leaking information, he said, his voice low but dangerous. If I find out who, there will be consequences. Unbeknownst to Morrison, Nicole and Roberts were already in the building, hidden in a service closet nearby. Nicole had hacked into the hotel security system, giving her access to the ballroom's cameras and microphones. We're live, Nicole whispered, pointing to her laptop. The screen displayed the room in real time, capturing every word Morrison said. Roberts adjusted his tie nervously. Are you sure about this? If they catch us here. They won't, Nicole interrupted, her voice firm. Now, get ready. You're up next. Confronting the devil. Roberts stepped into the ballroom, his heart pounding. All eyes turned to him, and the room fell silent. Roberts, Morrison said, his tone icy. What are you doing here? Roberts straightened his shoulders. I wanted to talk to you, Lieutenant, about the operation. Morrison's eyes narrowed. What about it? Before Roberts could respond, the screens in the room flickered. A moment later, Nicole's face appeared, her voice echoing through the speakers. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, she said, her tone sharp and commanding. I thought you'd like to see what your little operation looks like from the outside. Panic erupted as Nicole began broadcasting the files from the hard drive, each document flashing across the screens. Payment logs, transactions, and names were laid bare for everyone to see. What is this? One man shouted, rising from his chair. Morrison's face turned red with fury. Shut it down, he bellowed. But Nicole's voice continued. You've spent years profiting off stolen cars, ruined lives, and corrupt deals. It ends tonight. The collapse. Before Morrison could act, the sound of sirens filled the air. Roberts smiled grimly. I called internal affairs before I came in. They'll be here any minute. Morrison lunged at him, his fists clenched, but Roberts stepped back, holding up his hands. It's over, Morrison. You're done. As police officers stormed the room, Nicole ended the broadcast, her job complete. From her hidden location, she watched as Morrison was handcuffed and led out of the building, his face a mixture of rage and defeat. Nicole leaned back in her chair, a small smile on her lips. One down. A lot more to go. Roberts joined her minutes later, his face pale but relieved. We did it. Nicole nodded. This is just the beginning. But tonight, we made a difference. The fallout from Morrison's arrest was swift and seismic. News stations broadcast images of the disgraced lieutenant being led away in handcuffs, his face a mixture of anger and humiliation. The files Nicole had uncovered spread across social media like wildfire, igniting outrage and sparking protests. Corruption within the city's police department, which had long been suspected but never proven, was now undeniable. Public officials scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal, but Nicole's evidence was airtight. The network Morrison had protected for years was crumbling. Nicole sat in her office, scrolling through headlines on her laptop. Each article brought a sense of satisfaction, but also a lingering weight. Another victory for the people, she muttered to herself, though her voice lacked enthusiasm. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Come in, she called. Robert stepped inside, looking more composed than she'd ever seen him. His usual unease had been replaced by a quiet determination. "They suspended me," he said, holding up a manila envelope, "pending a full investigation." Nicole raised an eyebrow. "And how do you feel about that?" Roberts shrugged. "It's fair. I wasn't exactly a saint. But they offered me a deal, testify against the others, and they'll consider leniency." Nicole leaned back in her chair, studying him. "And will you?" "I already did," Roberts said. "Everything I've seen, everything I've done. I laid it all out. If this helps clean up the department, it's worth it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Nicole nodded. "Good. That's the first step toward redemption, repairing the damage." In the weeks that followed, Nicole used her growing platform to push for meaningful reforms. She worked tirelessly, meeting with activists, city leaders, and community members to ensure the fallout from the corruption scandal led to real change. Her tech company became a hub for justice initiatives. She launched a program to teach coding and cybersecurity to underprivileged youth, using technology as a tool for empowerment. One afternoon, Nicole visited a community center where the program had just started. A group of teenagers sat at computers, their eyes wide with excitement as they learned to write their first lines of code. "Thank you for this," said the center's director, shaking Nicole's hand. "These kids have never had access to anything like this before. You're giving them a future." Nicole smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "That's the goal. To make sure the next generation has opportunities we never dreamed of." A meeting of forgiveness. Later that evening, Nicole returned home to find her brother Marcus waiting for her. "Marcus," she said, surprised but pleased. "What are you doing here?" "I heard what you did," he said, his voice soft but filled with pride. "The whole city has. You took down the people who hurt us." Nicole gestured for him to sit, pouring them both a glass of water. "It wasn't just me," she admitted. "I had help." Marcus hesitated. "Roberts." Nicole nodded, her expression complicated. "He was part of it, Marcus. But he's trying to make amends. He testified, helped gather evidence. He risked everything to do the right thing." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "I know it doesn't undo what happened to you," Nicole continued, "but it's a start. And I think we should give him a chance to prove he's changed." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If you trust him, I'll try." Moving forward. A few days later, Nicole and Roberts met with Marcus at a small cafe. The atmosphere was tense at first, but as the conversation unfolded, Marcus began to see Roberts' sincerity. "I can't undo what I did to you," Roberts said, his voice heavy with regret. "But I promise, I'll spend the rest of my life fighting for justice, for people like you." Marcus studied him, then extended a hand. "Make sure you do." The handshake marked a turning point, not just for Roberts, but for everyone at the table. Epilogue: A legacy of justice. Months later, Nicole stood on a stage at a community gala, addressing a packed audience. "Tonight isn't about me," she said, her voice steady and powerful. "It's about what happens when we refuse to accept injustice, when we stand together and demand accountability. Change doesn't come easy, but it's always worth fighting for." The crowd erupted into applause, their energy electric. Among them, Robert stood quietly in the back, a faint smile on his face. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. As Nicole stepped down from the stage, she caught his eye and nodded. It was a silent acknowledgement of everything they had been through, and everything they had yet to accomplish. The fight for justice was far from over, but together, they were ready for whatever came next.